Hi, I'm Josh from FinalScanPro. Sometimes you will come across an idea or finding that's mentioned in another source, but you can't access the original material yourself. This is called a secondary reference. In this case, you cite the source you actually read, and you mention the original author in the text. For example, Patel's 2020 book discusses findings from a study by Green, published in 2012. You mention Green in the text, but since you didn't read Green's original study, only Patel's work appears in the reference list. It's important to remember that secondary referencing should only be used when the original text is genuinely unavailable. I hope you found the video useful. Finally, before submitting your work, don't forget to run it through FinalScanPro. You'll receive a Turnitin style similarity report with all issues clearly highlighted and color-coded. You'll also get a revision report with suggestions to fix the issues quickly. Apply the recommended changes, recheck if needed, and you'll have a clean, original paper ready to submit.